Hi Scott, welcome to our lecture and talk about renovations and working in the industry. I'd like to introduce everyone to Scott Himmelfarb. He is the Director of Operations for Coastal Plains. He's been with Coastal Plains for 4 years. Prior to that, he was with McLean Foods and South Coast Restaurants as the owner and president, which was eventually sold to Coastal Plains, and you are now back working them through some challenges that they were having. Welcome, and thank you for being here with us, and we'll go ahead and get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the industry?
Sure. So I began in the restaurant industry in the 80s with Marriott Corporation. I started off in a chain of restaurants that they owned named Roy Rogers. Worked through multiple positions with them, different management positions, up to a multi-unit manager, and watched the transition of Marriott selling those restaurants to Hardee's Corporation. Hardee's was headquartered in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, where I was asked if I would relocate and help transition some of those restaurants with a product that they wanted to roll out in the Carolinas. So I moved down here, and that would have been around 1990. Worked for about 2 years, had an opportunity at that time to join another franchisee of Taco Bell and form a partnership with him in the Taco Bell restaurant business. So that was in 92, and then I worked as a owner from 92 until 2007, 15 years, and grew our restaurants from where we had 3 stores to 17 before we sold them. So the experience that I had obviously with Marriott and with Hardee's was very beneficial because it allowed me to take the small business that my partner and I had and grow it in a way that it would be strong and sustainable and have all different levels of management so that it ran like a fairly mid-sized company.
How many stores do you have now?
Now we have 37.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the renovation project. How do you decide when stores need to be renovated? Is there a difference between when it is based on Coastal Plains versus franchise requirements?
Okay. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. The parent company of KFC and Taco Bell is called Yum. And our franchise agreement says that we will remodel our restaurants every 10 years. So a typical store that's brand new, for example, 10 years from now, it will go through a remodeling process on the exterior and the dining room up to the front counter. It's not required to change the kitchen unless we really need to. If something back there needs to be upgraded or changed, then we will at that time. At 20 years, that's when we go into what we call a full changeover. That is more extensive. It's more than just signage and paint. You're actually changing exterior structures where on the inside of our restaurant we'll take up the floor, take out the ceilings. It's not just a new dining room seating package. And so that's kind of how our process works with a franchisor, meaning Yum Brands and us being the franchisee. We know when our stores have to be remodeled, and we stick to that schedule.
So in the planning and the overseeing and the budget, what's the most time consuming of those?
The most time consuming is probably the overseeing of the project, lining up all of the vendors, the schedules for the team members, the management. So if we're going to do a remodel, there is a point where we'll have to close the store, especially if we're doing the kitchen now. So when we close our kitchen, I try to get everything lined up so that it won't be more than 2 weeks. But that is probably the biggest obstacle, is the planning and the purchasing of everything that goes into the remodel.
And what are some of the greatest challenges of renovating buildings, especially here in North Carolina?
Well, it's not been difficult, not in the Carolinas. Permitting seems to flow pretty easily as long as you have a good contractor, someone that knows what they're doing, and someone that you can depend upon as the architect to get the plans prepared. I would say the biggest challenges that I come across during the remodel process is the unknowns. Finding something in the store that we didn't expect. Maybe a water leak under a floor, or just maybe even when you get into the roof and you find that, okay, the structure has some rot or something to that extent.
How much of an effect do you feel the newly renovated facilities have on the public's opinion compared to some of the ones that haven't been updated in like 5-8 years plus?
No, I think it's positive. You know, anytime you go through a remodel process, your loyal customers that are used to visiting that restaurant want to know what's going on inside. So, and then those that maybe eat somewhere else, they have that same curiosity. And when you finally open back up to the public, and that gives everyone that urge to come in and see what's going on, what happened, what did you do, and that's the biggest thing. And so that's a big advantage for us. And then it's our job to do the right things when they do come back inside, so that they want to repeat the business.
What is more challenging, opening a new restaurant or renovating an older one?
Well, they're both challenging, but in different ways. I would say opening a new restaurant has a lot more obstacles. There's a lot more involved. There's definitely a lot more planning and purchasing that goes into a new restaurant. So making sure that you are staying within the budgeted guidelines that you put forth for that restaurant. And then again, just the hiring of a new team and getting them trained and prepared to open this restaurant when the time comes.
So what's the most common renovation, and then how does it impact functionality, and is it used to decrease energy consumption or other utilities, etc.
Sure.
in the building?
Sure. Well, the common things that we do, we're always looking to save energy. So LED lighting is probably one of the simplest things we do. We're going to do that in every renovation that we go through. Also, we look to put energy management systems in, which will help us control when equipment's turned on and off. Same thing again back with the LED lighting, so that the lights are turning off on their own. They're not just staying on all day long. Water consumption, obviously, when we can reduce the amount of water, Taco Bell especially uses a lot of water. Everything that we cook with is water-based, other than the fryers. So as we're able to reduce the amount of water that we use, that also reflects back in our energy savings.
What's the budgeting process for renovations?
Well, okay, so then we have pretty much a understanding of what a typical 10-year remodel should cost. It's simplified by the brand. So again, we go back to Yum, where they are working with the vendors to bring the cost down of what a typical seating package may cost. We know what it's going to look like because it's a very standardized order that all of the franchisees use. So we're not really varying out and making our own decisions when it comes to furniture. We have a couple different vendors that we use that are approved by Yum, and then the things that would cost us more than the typical project is when we get into the kitchen and we decide what we want to do back there.
How did you go about with choosing the location site for the new store downtown on 10th Street, and what was the process and how long did that take?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be downtown, but I also wanted to watch how the campus progressed, in which direction were they going to grow. So the 10th Street extension that they built caught my eye. Obviously, I have a restaurant over by the hospital on Stantonburg Road, which it can't be more than a couple miles from our new location. So that concerned me, but they are different trade areas, and it's a matter of convenience being down by the campus where we wanted the students to be able to walk as well as the faculty. So choosing the actual property where we are now was kind of limited. There's not a lot of property available down off of 10th Street. It may look like there is, but there's bigger and larger plans in place for those areas of empty lot. So our property is shaped kind of strange, as you might notice if you visit the store, but it's what we were able to do with what was available for us at the time.
So talk to us a little bit about the inside of the restaurants and things what are some typical equipment malfunctions or things that you have to constantly be aware of? Your hood system, what that's like when you have to remove it or do remodels.
Well, so it's very rare that I'm going to remove a hood system during a remodel. Our plans will usually be made around the hood. The fryer and equipment that sits under our hood is normally going to stay there. Sometimes I might extend the hood and make it larger, but it usually stays in place. I think one of the questions was what was the cost of a hood system in a typical restaurant. Taco Bell has a very small hood, KFC has a large hood, so you're probably talking, depending on the size, anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000, and that's everything included: the roofer, the electrician, the installer, and the cost of the hood. Our kitchen equipment that we need to be on top of and always preventive maintenance being performed would be refrigeration, especially. Those are the keys to our business. You can't allow refrigeration to falter. Obviously, everything has to stay cold, so those components need to be cleaned regularly and maintained by a professional. We have a maintenance division within our company, and that's one of their main tasks every month is to go around and clean coils and clean filters and keep that equipment checked and calibrated, watching the Freon levels, those sort of things.
Would you ever design a KFC or Taco Bell to be LEED certified? And are there other environmental changes that have been made over time?
Well, at this point, no, we're not looking to build a restaurant that would be LEED certifiable. But I know that there are plans in place with Yum where they are looking at multiple ways to be more environmentally friendly. Those are things that we kind of depend on our franchisor to give us different avenues to use. We're always looking to find different ways to handle our waste. Again, going back to the water and the consumption of the water, the consumption of electricity through using our LED lights. Those are all of the things that we're currently doing, but there's bigger, better things to come.
I think that you used to use a lot of outside service companies, but you now have a staff of your own maintenance personnel. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and the pros and cons of it?
Well, the pros are obviously you have your own team, so as issues arise, they're just a phone call away. That also, and I guess one of the big things is the preventive maintenance that happens within our restaurants, where in the past we would have to either do that ourselves as the management team and the store, the folks that work in the restaurants. Now, with having our own maintenance division, they can get out there and use the systems that we have in place as a company to make sure our things are being upkept at all times.
And do you guys utilize the online food ordering from things like Grubhub or Uber?
Yes, we do. We use them all. And
What technology do you have to have installed to be able to work with those companies and use the services?
yeah, good question. Originally, when we got into the delivery side of the business, we were already mobile, so you could place an order on your phone or through your laptop and pick it up at the restaurant. But once we got into, very heavily into the delivery business, especially with COVID, it kind of opened up all new avenues for everyone. We would use their tablet, their digital device that they would provide for us, and that way when an order was placed by a customer, it would come on the tablet. We would then bring it into our registers and make the product, and the delivery person would come to pick it up. Now, the technology has been created between our delivery partners and Taco Bell and KFC to where it integrates into our point of sale system in the store. So that technology is now available. A lot of our tablets have gone away. So once an order is placed, it automatically shifts right into our point of sale, shows up on our monitors, and we're able to start making the order at that point. So that's really improved and changed how we do business.
In your years with the Taco Bell and KFC franchising, have you seen more or less success with the standalone KFC and Taco Bell versus the locations that offer a split menu of the two restaurants?
Yeah, so our multi-brands, as we call them, they're successful. They do well. I prefer standalone. As a matter of fact, currently the option to be able to multi-brand the business together is no longer available. We found that it causes a strain on the team in the store to have two different, completely opposite brands being operated at the same time is very difficult. So we're more efficient, of course, with just one brand, and but we do have 3 locations of our own that have both brands currently in them.
Could you talk a little bit about the other franchises you've worked with or other restaurants and how they're different from KFC and Taco Bell?
Well, it was many years ago since I've been in Taco Bell now for, well, a long time, 30 years almost. But what I do remember about the other brands, which were burger brands, so they're completely different than chicken and tacos. You're still serving the customer. You still have equipment that has to be maintained. You still have the facilities that have to be upkept. The same planning and processes that go into where you're going to build a new restaurant or how you might remodel the existing stores are the same. I just think that from that many years ago, everything has changed in the fast food business. Everything is more user-friendly, it's simplified, and the brands that did not go down that path no longer exist. So not a lot of changes from the hands-on. You still have to be in there, you still have to prepare food. I just think the process behind it is simpler. Everything's prepared in a different way. More items are come in pre-cut, pre-clean, everything than back when I started.
So most of our students aren't going to have backgrounds as electricians, small equipment repair and those types of things. What would you suggest for students in terms of entering the industry and being able to, their part in facilities management and what they can do to start preparing for that, skills or other things they can do?
Well, there's classes that are available that you can take that kind of take you through the basics. You can certainly find several vendors, refrigeration, electrical, plumbing, and pay attention. When they're in there doing the things inside your restaurant, you have that opportunity then to ask questions and watch what they're doing so that in the future you could cut your costs by doing what they were doing. Not everything that they do requires a license and the experience behind it. I mean, you can change a filter yourself. You can brush coils yourself. You can change light bulbs, of course, things simple, water filtration, or you can pay somebody else to do it. But those would be the things as you prepare to get into the restaurant business or hospitality business that you can find large cost savings in.
When you do have service contracts with companies, what are some of the biggest challenges, and when you're negotiating those things, what should you look for or expect?
Well, yeah, I think the big thing is when you're asking an outside vendor to provide a, let's say, a monthly service, beware of more than what you need. That you know, there's certain things that you need, and there's probably things you don't need. I'll give you an example of like in our business, we'll use an outside vendor that provides floor mats and comes by once a week, takes them away, gives us a fresh mat, does some other simplified things for our business. But at the same time, they'll try to supply us with mop heads and towels and air fresheners and urinal screens, and you go down the list, and before you know it, what could have been a $15 a week service turns into $100, and most of those things you could get from your local distribution company for a much cheaper price.
So can you expand a little more about the 10-year facelift versus the 20-year full remodel?
Yeah, sure. So the 10-year facelift that like a Taco Bell will go through is more just exterior paint and signage. And then in the dining room, we'll change the furniture. If our dining room package is core drilled, meaning the table legs are actually anchored into the tile and concrete, then we just change the top of the table. The base stays the same. So there's a minimal cost involved. Usually everything else in the store from the counter back stays the way it is. When we get into the 20-year remodel, it's not that we have to go into the kitchen and make changes, it's that I want to. So after a restaurant has been operating for 20 years, you can imagine the wear and tear that a kitchen might go through. If you're waiting on 700 to 1,000 people a day for 20 years, there's going to be a need for change. So like in a Taco Bell right now, we have more freezer items. We have fries. We didn't used to have fries. And we got more frozen items that are coming in the future too. So our freezer capacity is not where it needs to be. So what I'll do in that situation is I will tear the old cooler, the old freezer out of the restaurant and try to add it onto the back of the store. Then, for example, you'll still be able to access the freezer and the cooler from the inside of the kitchen, but now we have that additional space on the inside of the store, and now I have a much bigger cooler and freezer to go along with it. We put in new epoxy floors where we'll take up all of our old tile floors, new ceilings, new walls, especially new lighting, LED lighting, brighten it up. And any other changes that need to be made. I like to do it because it gives me an opportunity to move a wall or to readjust equipment to a different location that makes it a better flow for the employees that are working in the store and for the management team.
Well, thank you, Mr. Himmelfarb, for sharing your experience with us and talking to us a little bit more about facilities management.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yep.